Welcome back, everyone. Ready for another deep dive? Today, we're going somewhere that really surprised me, honestly. We're talking about the Andes Mountains, but not the mountains themselves. We're going to look at this mollusk. It's called the Spondylus.
Interesting.
And this thing was hugely important to ancient civilizations there.
Really?
Yeah, even more than gold.
Wow, more than gold. You don't hear that every day.
I know, it's pretty wild. So we're going to try and figure out just why this little spondylus was so incredibly valued. The red gold route. Pretty catchy, right?
Yeah, definitely makes you want to learn more.
For sure. So are you ready to figure out just why this red gold was so important?
Absolutely. I'm ready to dive in.
Okay, well, let's start with this. The spondylus was like super intertwined with the Incas' understanding of their environment,
Okay.
especially this thing called El Niño.
Oh, El Niño, right. That climate pattern that affects the Pacific Ocean.
Mm.
So warmer water, it shifts the weather.
Right, exactly. And for the Incas,
Yeah.
it could mean the difference between good rain and like total flooding, catastrophic flooding.
Real game changer.
Totally. But so how does our friend the spondylus fit into all of this?
Well, the Incas noticed this link between the Spondylus and El Niño,
Okay.
like a direct link. So the Spondylus's availability, how intense the color was, even how thick its shell was.
Oh.
All that stuff would change based on ocean currents,
Ah.
which were all tied to El Niño. It was basically like a living barometer.
That's incredible. So they didn't just see it as some, pretty shell.
Yeah,
It was vital information about their whole world.
Yeah, for sure. And they weren't alone.
Mm.
Other civilizations, like the Moche, they were around before the Inca.
Okay.
They also used the Spondylus to understand their environment, and they even included it in their most important rituals.
Like how, did they put shells around their fields or something?
No, it was much more intricate. See, the Moche, they were famous for their metalwork.
Oh, yeah, right. And those elaborate burials.
Exactly. They actually put Spondylus shells in the tomb of one of their most important rulers,
Really?
the Lord of Sipan.
Wow. Buried with something more valuable than gold.
It's a statement for sure.
Okay, that definitely says something about how important it was. But I'm still a little stuck on how they even got these shells.
Yeah.
Weren't the Incas like a mountain empire?
Well, that's where the ingenuity comes in.
Yeah.
And this amazing network they built called the Kapaknan,
Kapaknan.
to translate for you, it says the extensive road network that connected the 4 regions of the Inca world. It was massive.
How big are we talking?
Imagine a network of roads, trails, bridges, all stretching over 40,000 kilometers.
Wait, 40,000 kilometers? That's basically going all the way around the Earth.
It's pretty amazing, especially when you consider that they built this across, like, the most challenging terrain imaginable.
Yeah, I mean, mountains, deserts, jungles,
Yeah.
and all this way before modern technology.
Exactly.
Okay, so this network wasn't just for spondylus shells, though.
No. This was their lifeline.
Okay.
The Kapaknan, it allowed for trade,
Uh-huh.
communication, troop movement. It's how they kept control over all those different areas they ruled, their information superhighway.
And it all started with this tiny little mollusk. But hold on, to actually get the spondylus,
Yeah.
they'd need to get it from the coast right.
Right.
And they weren't really known for being sailors.
That's true. But that's what makes this so interesting. They actually learned how to be good sailors.
Oh, really?
Yeah. From these coastal cultures, people like the Monteños,
Manteños, okay.
these guys were the shipbuilding experts. They could build these huge rafts, like 16 meters long.
Wow.
And those things could carry 30 tons.
30 tons. That's insane. Those must have been some sturdy rafts.
They were incredibly well built, and they needed to be to handle the currents and bring back all those spondylus shells.
Yeah.
So yeah, it challenges that whole idea of the Incas only being a mountain people.
So they were more flexible than we usually think.
Oh, absolutely.
Huh.
They saw how good the Manteños were, and they brought that expertise into their empire.
Smart.
It meant they controlled the sea routes and could get to that precious spondylus.
They were good at recognizing the value of different kinds of knowledge, it seems.
For sure. And it wasn't just about taking. This whole spondylus trade led to exchange and innovation.
Oh.
Things like lapis lazuli from Chile,
Wow.
ceramics from Mesoamerica, all traveling these routes.
So it's almost like a prehistoric Silk Road.
It is, all driven by the spondylus.
But speaking of interconnectedness,
Yeah.
Andean idea of duality.
Right.
What does that even mean?
Basically, it's this idea of 2 opposing forces that are connected.
Okay.
It's all over Andean culture, their buildings, what they believe about the universe.
So how would they show that duality?
Well, even just geographically, the Andes are a place of contrasts, right? Tall mountains, deep valleys, deserts, rainforests.
Yeah.
The Incas saw this reflected in everything: the sun and moon,
Uh-huh.
life and death. And the Spondylus.
Yeah.
It's connected to the sea and the rain, which brings life to the mountains. So it became a powerful symbol.
So it's not just about how much it's worth.
No,
It's about this deeper understanding of the world.
exactly. And that brings us to another really interesting place, Chavin de Huantar.
I think I've heard of that. What's the Spondylus connection?
It was this huge religious center,
Okay.
and they had an oracle there
An oracle.
that used the Spondylus.
Hmm.
People would travel from all over the Andes to ask the oracle for guidance.
Like, what kind of questions would they ask?
Well, probably similar stuff to what we worry about today.
Okay.
You know, good harvest, good weather, no bad luck.
Makes sense.
But don't forget, this is a society that was super in tune with nature.
Right.
So knowing about El Niño
Mm-hmm.
and what messages the Spondylus might be giving,
Yeah.
that was huge.
It really makes you think about their beliefs.
Yeah.
How they took this simple object and tied it into how they saw the whole universe.
It's incredible. It really is.
It is.
And this leads to another big question. Could the Spondylus actually be part of how civilization started in the Americas?
Whoa. Okay. That's a big thought. How could a seashell do that?
Well, the video talks about this place called Caral in Peru.
Okay.
It's considered the oldest city in the Americas. It was around way before the Incas.
Thousands of years before.
Yeah. And while it's not certain, some archaeologists think that changes in the ocean currents, probably tied to El Niño
Uh-huh.
and reflected in the Spondylus, might have had something to do with Caral developing.
So the idea is those changes in the ocean, which the Spondylus might have helped them predict,
Right.
could made people settle in new places, which then led to these complex societies like Corral.
Yeah, that's the theory.
It's pretty compelling, makes you rethink what led to civilization in the Americas.
It really does.
Yeah.
And it all goes back to this humble mollusk.
Who knew a seashell could hold so much history?
It's amazing what you can find when you start digging into the past.
It really is amazing. It makes you think about all those seemingly small things in the past and how much meaning they might have held. Like, we've got this city, Corral, maybe popping up because of these shifting ocean currents. And then you've got the Moche putting the Spondylus in their super fancy tombs. And then there's the Incas with this gigantic network they built.
Oh,
And all of it seems to be connected to this mollusk.
it's really fascinating.
It is. So what do you think ties all these civilizations together then? I mean, they're all so different.
Well, even though they were separated by time and place, there's this one big thing they all shared:
Okay, what's that?
a deep, deep respect for the power of nature.
Oh, right. Like that duality idea we were talking about.
Exactly. It's not just some abstract philosophy for them.
Right.
It shows how they understood this balance between all the different forces in nature.
So it was less about like conquering nature and more about living alongside it.
Exactly. Think about it.
Mm.
The Incas, the Moche, even those people in Corral way back when, they were all living in this landscape where nature could be amazing, but also really dangerous.
Yeah, true.
And the Spondylus, with its connection to the sea, the rain, and El Niño, it became this really strong symbol
A symbol of what?
of that duality,
Yeah.
that interconnectedness.
And a symbol that they weren't always in control.
That's a really good point.
Mhm.
Because even with all their knowledge, they were still vulnerable.
Like the Moche, they seemed to understand El Niño pretty well, but
Right.
they were still basically destroyed by those floods.
It's a powerful example.
Hmm.
You know, the video even says, and I'll translate, it says, the variation in the currents of the Pacific Ocean, traceable in the traces of the Spondylus mollusk, marked the birth and fall of empires and religions in ancient Peru.
Whoa, okay. Heavy stuff. It reminds us that even today, we're not completely in charge.
For sure.
So I'm curious, did these civilizations see the Spondylus as a way to, like, keep nature happy, maybe even try to control it?
It's a really interesting question. I think the answer is complicated.
Okay.
But think of it this way. For the Incas, the Spondylus wasn't just some object.
Right.
It was knowledge. It helped them get ready for El Niño,
Uh-huh.
so they could prepare for the good and the bad. In a way, that knowledge gave them some control, some way to deal with these huge forces.
So instead of controlling nature itself, they focused on understanding it, which gave them a different kind of control.
That's a great way to put it. It takes us back to this idea of the Spondylus as this sacred thing.
Right, like the oracle at Chavin de Huantar.
Exactly. People would travel for miles to ask the oracle questions.
It must have been a big deal.
Huge. And the Spondylus, with its connection to the natural world, it would have been a big part of those rituals.
So it wasn't just about, like, predicting the weather?
No, No,
It was about something much bigger.
it was about connecting with something beyond themselves, getting answers to the big questions in life.
It's incredible how something as simple as a shell could mean so much.
Right. It was about their environment, their beliefs, how their society worked.
Makes you wonder if we're even looking at the past the right way.
Oh, for sure. We tend to think that gold and jewels are what mattered most.
Yeah.
But for these people, the Spondylus was way more important. It wasn't about money. It was about knowledge, connection,
Yeah.
and respecting the forces that shaped their world.
And it wasn't static. The Spondylus trade with that whole Quapactan network, it connected people and ideas over such long distances.
You're right. It wasn't just about moving shells around.
Right.
It built this whole network of communities.
Yeah.
And not just Inca communities. Think about the Moche and Corral thousands of years before.
Wow.
They were all connected by this.
It's like the Spondylus was this thread running through it all.
Yeah. So even though these civilizations came and went, there was this common thread, this respect for the Spondylus and what it represented.
So even with all the changes, there was still that connection.
Exactly. It shows that history isn't just about separate civilizations.
Yeah.
It's about how ideas, beliefs, and practices flow between them. It connects us to the past in a way we don't always see.
It's like the past is more connected than we think.
It is. And it brings up a big question.
Go.
What can we learn from all this, from the Spondylus and how it shaped these ancient Andean civilizations?
Yeah, what's the big takeaway here?
I think one of the most important things is remembering how crucial it is to respect nature.
Okay.
The Incas and those before them, they understood nature's power, its duality, and its interconnectedness in a way that we've kind of lost.
They weren't trying to rule over nature, they were trying to learn from it.
Exactly. And while we might not worship the Spondylus or build huge roads for shells, we can learn from them.
Like, we need to think about the balance of our planet.
Yes. Especially with climate change and everything.
So, in a way, the Spondylus is still talking to us.
In a way, yeah.
It's telling us to pay attention to our planet.
And maybe it's also telling us to think about what we value. What do we really think is important? Is it just money and stuff, or is it something bigger, something that connects us to the world around us?
It's like those Spondylus shells buried with the Lord of Sapon.
Right.
They didn't care about gold as much as they cared about that connection to nature and the forces that controlled their lives.
And maybe that's what we should take away from all this.
Okay.
We need to rethink our priorities.
Yeah.
Look past the material stuff and focus on what really matters.
It makes you wonder what things we use today.
Yeah.
Like, what things we have now might one day be the key to understanding our civilization the way the Spondylus is for the Andes.
That's a pretty mind-blowing thought.
It is. What will future archaeologists think when they see our iPhones and water bottles?
Right. Or our obsession with social media. What will our stuff tell them about us?
And will they see that same respect for nature, that interconnectedness that these Andean cultures had?
Or will they see a totally different story?
Yeah.
One where we're disconnected from nature and just taking advantage of it?
It makes you think about what we're leaving behind.
Definitely. It
Yeah.
makes us question what impact we're having on the planet. But for now, let's just appreciate this journey we've been on, following the Spondylus through the Andes.
It's crazy to think about people digging up our trash in the future,
Yeah,
trying to figure us out.
right. Makes you think twice about what you throw away.
It really does. But that's what's so cool about these deep dives.
What do you mean?
They make you think about the big picture, you know?
Yeah, for sure.
And this whole Spondylus thing has been a real eye-opener.
Totally agree. I mean, it's changed how I see the Incas and those other civilizations.
Yeah, like I always thought of them as mountain people.
Right.
But their connection to the ocean, how good they were at sailing, that's a whole different side to them.
Side we don't always hear about.
And all because of a little shell. Who would have thought?
It's amazing how something so small can be so important.
It really shows you how everything's connected, doesn't it?
Absolutely. One little object can lead you to all these huge things.
Like ancient trade routes,
Yeah.
belief systems,
yeah?
even how the planet works.
It's mind-boggling.
And it's not just about the past either.
What do you mean?
Well, like the video said, El Niño still affects the Andes today.
Right.
So understanding it is super important.
Especially with climate change and everything.
Yeah. Those ancient civilizations figured out how to deal with El Niño.
Yeah.
And we can learn a lot from
That's
them.
time.
It's like the Spondylus is still giving us advice,
It is, in a way.
telling us to take care of our planet.
And maybe to rethink what we consider valuable, too.
What do you mean?
Well, those Spondylus shells in the Lord of Sapan's tomb,
Yeah.
it shows they valued something more than just gold and riches.
Something deeper, right?
Yeah. A A connection to nature.
to those powerful forces that shaped their world.
Exactly.
So maybe that's the lesson here.
Maybe is.
We need to step back and look at what's really important.
Think about what truly sustains us, not just materially.
That's a pretty powerful message to wrap up with.
It is.
So, everyone listening out there, I hope you've enjoyed this deep dive into the world of the Spondylus.
Me too.
It's a fascinating story with so many layers.
For sure.
And it has a lot to teach us, even today.
Absolutely.
So keep exploring, keep asking questions, and keep learning.
The world is full of amazing things waiting to be discovered.
And until next time, keep on diving deep.